Welcome to the MCB Mark I livestream systems for use in mass creation environment conditions. Automatic broadcasting systems engage. High fidelity display setup activated. Audio visual input terminals activated. Stream quality monitoring activated. Automatic bitrate optimizer engage. Real-time moderation systems activated. Live chat violation monitoring activated. Communications interface online. Have a very fun stream.
Now, let's see what we have here. Welcome everyone to a third edition of Mass Creation Live. I keep messing it up. This is CreationCast3. Alright. No notifications right now. So, if any of you have gotten the title, today we have quite a controversial state of things. Quite a few surprises, I would say, from the title. Alright, let's stop dragging this along and see how we got evolution wrong. Homo sapiens is shadow species. Hence, we may have had story of evolution all wrong. Posted April 25th. Carl Sagan observed that the frontal lobe of the human brain, comprising more than 2/3 of our brain mass, is where matter is transformed into consciousness. Maybe, suggest scientists, we've had the story of human evolution wrong. That language evolved before our brains starting getting larger. We have brains 3 times the size of apples. And language led to brain size increase instead of being as a result of it. An extraordinary discovery in 2017 suggests perhaps yes, when paleoanthropologists demonstrated that the species Homo naledi existed in southern Africa between 236,000 and 335,000 years ago, potentially the same time that modern humans first emerged in Africa. A puzzle. This discovery presented a puzzle for scientists who long held that there was only one species in Africa at this late time period, Homo sapiens. How did this species exist alongside with others with brains 3 times its size? A 2018 study suggests that Naledi's behavior may have reflected the shape and structure of the brain more than its size. The small brains of Homo naledi raise new questions about the evolution of human brain size. Image above. Let's see. Alright. I remind everyone of the image. Perfect. Big brains were costly to human ancestors, and some species may have had paid the cost with richer diets, hunting and gathering, and longer childhoods. But that scenario doesn't seem to work well for Homo naledi, which had hands well suited for tool making, long legs, human-like feet, and teeth suggesting a high-quality diet. Our original sun was a supernova. Has the phenomenon affected Earth's evolution and climate? Okay, this seems unrelated to this. Oh, alright. According to study co-author John Hawkes, a paleontologist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, Naledi's brain seems like one you might predict for Homo habilis 2 million years ago, but habilis didn't have such a tiny brain. Naledi did. Maybe brain size isn't all it's cracked up to be, said Hawkes. it opens the door for us to say that maybe they were more capable than we might assume. Maybe it isn't just brain size. The research shows that the more complex structural features of brains may not solely be a consequence of size, and it suggests that modern humans, Neanderthals, and Homo naledi may have a common ancestor. Tiny brain packed a big punch. Homo naledi may have had a pint-sized brain, but that brain packed a big punch. Research by Ralph Holloway and colleagues that include researchers from the University of Witwatersrand, Johannesburg, South Africa, published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, examines the imprints of the brain upon the skull of the species, called endocasts. The research highlights the human-like shape of Naledi's tiny brain, surprising scientists who studied the fossils. Alright, why do I get the feeling that this article has two stories converged into one? Because of... Yeah, this website has a weird style because that was not part of the original story. Interesting. Homo naledi endocast, top, with a curvature map, bottom, highlighting the sulci that are visible. The frontal of Naledi's brain looked very human-like despite its small size. Heather Garvin, Des Moines University. What? Up and down? Okay. Hawks and study co-author Sean Hurst, then at Indiana University Bloomington, presented some of the size and structure data at a meeting in April 2017, but the most recent study includes new comparative data that examines differences between Homo naledi and its Australopithecus cousins, Sediba and Africanus. In these cousins and in apes, a groove called the fronto-orbital sulcus is visible. In humans and other Homo species, this feature isn't visible because two neighboring areas of the frontal lobe have expanded, partly covering over another area known as the insula. The best preserved endocast from Homo naledi also lacks evidence of the frontal orbital sulcus and mirrors the human form despite its size. As you can see, I'm a great expert who knows how to pronounce sulcus. In these cousins and in apes, reported the University of Wisconsin, a groove called the fronto-orbital sulcus is visible. In humans and other Homo species, this feature isn't there, because two neighboring areas of the frontal lobe have expanded, partly covering over another area known as the insula. The best preserved endocast from Homo naledi also lacks evidence of the fronto-orbital sulcus and mirrors the human form despite its small size. Questions a long-held belief. These findings draw further into question the long-held belief that human evolution was an inevitable march towards bigger, more complex brains. Perfectly fair. The Rising Star Caves Fragments. The discovery of Homo naledi by Lee Berger of Wits University Center for Exploration of Deep Human Journey and his team at the Rising Star Caves in the Cradle of Humankind in 2013 was one of the largest hominin discoveries ever made and hailed as one of the most significant hominin discoveries of the 21st century. Berger and John Hawks, who was also part of the original Rising Star team, who made the Naledi discovery, as well as Heather Garvin from Des Moines University in the US, are associated with the Evolutionary Studies Institute, ECI, based at Wits University. The researchers pieced together traces of Homo naledi's brain shape from an extraordinary collection of skull fragments, partial crania from at least 5 adult individuals. One of these bore a very clear imprint of the convolutions of the surface of the brain's left frontal lobe. This is the skull I've been waiting for my whole career, said lead author Ralph Holloway of Columbia University. The anatomy of Naledi's frontal lobe was similar to humans, and very different from great apes. Naledi wasn't alone. Other members of our genus, from Homo erectus to Homo habilis, and the small-brained hobbit, Homo floresiensis, also share features of the frontal lobe with living humans, but earlier human relatives like Australopithecus africanus had a much more ape-like shape in this part of the brain, suggesting that functional changes in this brain region emerged with Homo. It's too soon to speculate about language or communication in Homo naledi, said co-author Sean Hurst, but today human language relies upon this brain region. Another story from the Daily Galaxy about climate change. Let's skip over it. The back of the brain also showed human-like changes in Naledi compared to more primitive hominins like Australopithecus. Human brains are usually asymmetrical, with the left brain displaced forward relative to the right. The team found signs of this asymmetry in one of the most complete Naledi skull fragments. They also found hints that the visual area of the brain, in the back of the cortex, was relatively smaller in Naledi than in chimpanzees, another human-like trait. Language may have led to brain size increase. But we did not find asymmetry in the frontal lobe. Asymmetry would be if the left and right sides are different, because we didn't have a skull with both left and right sides of the frontal, not because we looked and it wasn't there. Okay, so they didn't have the full frontal lobe before. Okay, said Hurst. We're now studying a more complete skull found later, but we couldn't determine if there was asymmetry in the rising star cave fragments. Not that it didn't have any. Instead, we found that the frontal lobe of Homo naledi, despite being similar in size to a chimpanzee frontal lobe, looked like a human frontal lobe in form, particularly in the area where humans produce speech. I'm in all sorts of places today. Broca's language area is where humans produce speech. Hurst told the Daily Galaxy. This suggests, he said, some sort of language evolved before our brains started getting larger. We have brains 3 times the size of apes. And that language may have led to brain size increase instead of being a result of it. A human-like brain organization might mean that Naledi shared some behavior with humans despite having a much smaller brain size. Lee Berger, a co-author on the paper, suggests that the recognition of Naledi's small but complex brain will also have a significant impact on the study of African archaeology. Archaeologists have been too quick to assume that complex stone tool industries were made by modern humans, said Berger. With Naledi being found in southern Africa, at the same time and place that the Middle Stone Age industry emerged, maybe we've had the story wrong the whole time. The Daily Galaxy, with paleoanthropologist Sean Hurst via University of Wisconsin and University of Witwatersrand. Image credit top image thanks to deposit photos. The Galaxy Report newsletters brings you twice weekly news of space and science that has the capacity to provide clues of the mystery of our existence and add a much needed cosmic perspective in our current Anthropocene epoch. And nobody commented. Perfect. Well, we certainly learned that my language needs some practice. And that developing language led to us humans having larger brains. Perfect. So starting this stream was a good idea. Anyway, before we go to the next story, I'll have to take a short break because I didn't shield it properly. It's still a learning curve. So excuse me as I I'm disappointed in myself. I talked to the void for the past 3 minutes because I forgot to unmute myself. Well, you've all missed my apology to the people of South Africa for not pronouncing with watershed right, and oof. Let's hope this won't repeat in future streams. But anyway, I said that the articles you'll find in the description, and you have further videos to watch if you're interested. And now let's get back to the pretty spider and Pentagons story. Oh my god. Learning curve, steep learning curves. New proof reveals that graphs with no pentagons are fundamentally different. Researchers have proved a special case of the Erdős-Hanyal conjecture, which shows what happens in graphs that exclude anything resembling a pentagon. When you walk into a room full of people, you can speculate about all sorts of things, from political leanings to TV viewing habits. But if the room has at least 6 people, you can say something about them with absolute mathematical certainty, thanks to a 1930 theorem by Frank Ramsey. Among these people, there's either a group of 3 people who all know each other, or a group of 3 who have never met. And before I realized that I was muted, great times. Before that, I said that this is one of those things which makes perfect sense once you realize it, but it's probably something you've never thought of before hearing it. Yeah, I mean, could you say it any other way? If you have 6 people, either 3 know each other, or 3 haven't met, at least. At least 3 haven't met. Alright. The scope of Ramsey theory, which examines the patterns that emerged as a group gets larger, expands well beyond social gatherings. It also has direct and crucial implications for a branch of mathematics known as graph theory. These graphs consist of collections of points, or vertices, that may or may not be connected to each other by an edge, equivalent to people at a party who may or may not have met before. The size of a graph is set by n, the number of vertices it has. A portion of a graph in which every vertex is connected by an edge to every other vertex is fittingly called a clique. Conversely, a portion of a graph in which no vertex is connected to any other vertex is called an anti-clique, or stable set. The mathematician Paul Erdős was prolific in this area, proving numerous theorems that set quantitative bounds on the size of the cliques and stable sets that can arise in Ramsey theory. But in a paper published in 1989, Erdős and his frequent collaborator Erdős-Hanyal raised a question that's still not fully answered. If you take a big graph and insist that no subset of that graph's vertices will have the exact pattern of edges and non-edges that match a smaller graph, known as an induced subgraph, will you automatically end up with a larger maximum clique or stable set than you'd see in a random drawn graph of the same size? For those of you who couldn't follow, don't worry. I was so focused on reading that I couldn't follow either. If there was anyone in the chat, oh, someone's watching. Very well. That might be my YouTube studio, but never mind that. Let's see again what this conjecture was. If you take a big graph and insist that no subset of that graph's vertices will have the exact pattern of edges and non-edges that match a smaller graph, known as an including graph, okay, now it's clear, will you automatically end up with a larger maximum clique or stable set than you'd see in a randomly drawn graph of the same size? Okay. So, the orange vertices form a clique. They are all connected to each other. The purple vertices form a stable set. They are not connected to each other. Alright. Yes, this is true. If Erdős-Honyal conjecture is true, then graphs with forbidden induced subgraphs behave very differently from general graphs, according to Maria Chudnovsky of Princeton University. Man, I have it with names today. It tells you that if you provide me with some very local information about the graph, information regarding a small number of vertices, then something global happens. If I forbid a certain small structure, then a huge structure will inevitably emerge. The global consequences of local restrictions is a common theme in graph theory, says Timothy Gowers of the University of Cambridge. But, like many other conjectures that are relatively simple to state but surprisingly hard to solve, this conjecture seems to expose a gap in our understanding. Yeah, remember what I said earlier in the article? That it's not quite the same thing. But, yeah. Very often conjectures are simple to state and hard to solve. Oh, isn't math wonderful? Now, in a February 2021 paper, Chudnovsky, Alex Scott of the University of Oxford, Paul Seymour of Princeton University, and Sophie Spierkel of the University of Waterloo have made huge progress toward filling in that gap. They didn't prove the whole conjecture, but they show that it holds true for a critical induced subgraph singled out by Erdős and Honyal. We were all a little shocked, Chudnovsky said. We thought this would be the case that was false, and the conjecture would fall. Gowers called the work exciting. And Waszek Chwotal, I don't know how to pronounce Polish names. No, that's not Polish. That's something Croatian. Slovak. All right. Of Concordia University said a number of good people have tried very hard over the years to solve this problem. This is a major result in graph theory, added Fanchung Graham, a mathematician of the University of South of Carolina, San Diego. All right. This is the article taking payback that I said I could pronounce well names before. All right, article, I see what you're doing. I don't like it, but I see what you're doing. Slow progress. Although the Erdős-Honyal conjecture is fundamental and fascinating, said Chvátal, proving it has turned out to be extremely difficult. So far, mathematicians have attacked it on a case-by-case basis, mostly starting with the smallest prohibited structures and moving up from there. But progress has been slow, with major results emerging about once every decade or two. That means the conjecture has only been confirmed in a handful of instances to date, including all those in which the excluded induced subgraph has 4 vertices or fewer. In 2005, Chudnovsky and Shmuel Safra of Tel Aviv University proved that the Erdős-Honyal conjecture was upheld when the forbidden induced subgraph is a 5-vertex structure known as the bool, which resembles an inverted triangle with 2 single-vertex horns on top. I don't know about you guys, but yeah, this could be a bool. We have it right here. But to me it looks like an upside-down A. Just saying. That left 2 5-vertex configurations still open, the pentagon or really any five-sided polygon, also called a five-circle. Creative, guys. This is technically accurate, somewhat. A five-cycle. Okay. And this is why I do these streams, because I need to learn how to read in real time. Alright. So, the pentagon, also called a five-cycle, and the five-vertex path, which consists of 4 line segments linked together, forming an open chain. Of the 2 outstanding problems, the five-cycle was the more prominent because of the elevated status granted it by Erdős and Honyal, and consequently by everyone else. They thought that it was complicated enough that if you could call that case, you could settle the conjecture for all cases, said János Poch of the Rényi Institute of Mathematics in Budapest, who collaborated with Erdős and Honyal. Honyal, among others, suspected that the conjecture would ultimately turn out to be false, and when he first started on this project, Seymour would have agreed. He thought the five-cycle case in particular would be the counterexample demonstrating that very point, but instead the opposite occurred. He and his co-authors showed that barring this particular induced subgraph from a graph would invariably produce either a larger Greek or a stable set, exactly as prescribed by the Erdős-Honyal conjecture. In 1989, Paul Erdős left, and his frequent collaborator András Honyal asked what happens to graph if you exclude given substructures. And we're just halfway through the article. I'm sorry guys, but by the looks of it, we won't go through all the promised articles today. Alright. Combing for results. To reach their unexpected result, the team relied upon the classic techniques of proof by contradiction. I applied it as well several times. They assume that there is a counterexample to the conjecture, a graph that does not contain a five-cycle anywhere, but also does not have a sufficiently large clique or stable set, in defiance of Erdős-Honyal. When then tried to prove so many things about it that it can't possibly exist, Seymour said, and if the counterexample could not exist, that meant the conjecture must have been right in the first place. The actual argument, of course, is more involved. The team wasn't interested in just any counterexample, they sought the smallest possible one, which is a common tactic in graph theory, Sperkel said. Mathematicians often find minimal counterexamples easier to work with because they can focus on those parts of the graph that are relevant to the problem at hand and temporarily ignore the rest. Familiar feeling, yeah. Just focus on one thing and ignore everything else, yeah. This is why it's theoretical. The smallest counterexample has the property such that if I delete a single vertex, then it suddenly is not a counterexample anymore, Sperkel said. The remaining graph, which has been reduced from n to n-1 vertices, now has a clique or stable set that isn't so big, that's so big it no longer qualifies as a counterexample. Can any of you follow this? I know no one is watching, but can any of you follow this? If yes, considering I have less than 200 subscribers, I'm very proud of you. The five-cycle proof also built on a 2020 paper from Pach and Istvan Toman that presented a method for finding certain structures called combs in a graph. To get a sense of what these combs look like, imagine a graph that contains something resembling a simple wide tooth comb with the teeth pointing outward. Let's also assume that there is a vertex directly above the comb, with edges that connect it to the tips of all teeth. You know? Let's take a moment together. Let's just ease into it. Alright. when I started reading this, I expected it to be a lot easier to follow. I mean, this is actually a newscast, so it should be relatively easy to follow. Don't you agree? Oh, what do I put myself through? All right. We've all had our breather, a little bit of laugh, and I think we can get back into this. All right. Let's also assume there is a vertex directly above the comb, along with edges that connect it to the tips of all teeth. The object we've just described is similar to a comb in the mathematical sense. There, at the base of each tooth, lies a string of vertices that may have edges between them. If we look more closely at the edge between two such vertices, we can follow a path from that base up through the two parallel teeth, each continuing with an edge. Alright, we're dropping our pretenses, we're reading this in a funny voice. From there, we connect the tips of the teeth via separate edges to the single vertex above the comb, and the shape we've just traced out is actually a 5-sided polygon. Brilliant! In their new paper, Chudnovsky and her colleagues refined Pach and Thoman's methods to show that every smallest counterexample contains somewhere within it a large comb. That implies that it must have a 5-cycle. The one thing it's not supposed to have. And of course, that means it's not a counterexample at all. By showing that no counterexample to the conjecture could be found, the 4 collaborators proved that a conjecture must be true in this case. Brilliant. A route to the summit? Now that the 5-cycle question is answered, could it lead to a proof of the full conjecture as Erdos and Haniel anticipated? For a long time, the 5-cycle seemed just as hard as the general question, Seymour said. The hope was that if we could do that, we could do the general question. But that hope has fizzled a bit. This proof... Could you shut up, motorcycle? Someone is all rousing up outside. Alright. The hope was that if we could do that, we could do the general question. But that hope has fizzled a bit. This proof doesn't nearly bring us there, Sperkel confessed. At the moment, it seems that we would need some significant new ideas. But there is hope, she added. It may be the first of a long series of steps. Solving the 5-cycle case makes more people think that the general conjecture must be true, Graham said. Although no one has found a way to prove it yet, having a success like this helps spread the word. Yes. Pop science it up. I'm not sure how much my voice helps, but damn right, Graham. We must spread this word! I'm not sure how that landed, but if I got even one more viewer, which I didn't, this would have been worth it. Well, I'll be back tomorrow anyway, so I can wait for that viewer. I can wait for my first comment on the live stream. Anyway, even on its own, the proof is still considered a major accomplishment. The biggest development concerning this conjecture is more than a decade, and one whose results are not solely limited to this 5-cycle case. The techniques they were forced to develop to solve this problem can be applied to other problems, said Chvatal, which is how we make progress in mathematics. Yes, solve one thing, which can solve another thing, which connects things, and together we have one big L ultra conjecture which theorizes the hypothesis of I'm boring. I'm getting boring. The four co-authors have already begun this process, proving in the same paper that Erdos-Hanyal conjecture holds for other special cases, including the so-called 5-cycle with a hat, a 6-cycle with an extra edge that joins two vertices, forming a pentagon with a triangle or hat on top. The 5-cycle with a hat, which is a crossed hexagon. Of course. But there is one induced subgraph in particular that many mathematicians have in their sights. The 5-vertex path has to be next, Seymour said. If you can't do that, you're still nowhere. There are definitely ideas from the 5-cycle proof that seem useful for the 5-vertex path, Sparkle said. But wouldn't that make us all the way there? Given that in present no one knows how to attack the conjecture as a whole, the only available option, Chudnovsky said, is approaching this problem one case at a time. We do what we can do. And of course, there's always a chance that this piecemeal approach could yield a big payoff. One reason we're doing these special cases is that they might lead us to a counterexample, said Seymour, which would show that the conjecture is false. 32 years after it first published, the Erdos-Hanyal conjecture has turned out to be a surprisingly treacherous path, said Patch. Chudnovsky, Scott, Seymour, and Sporkle have settled this special case, but still don't know where it stands. From our present location, we cannot see the summit. Perhaps we are almost there. Alright. Thanks, Rex. I'll get to your comment in a minute. Perhaps we are less than halfway. We have to wait for the fog to lift. Okay. Let's see. From Rex on YouTube, it's boring material, but if it's needed for an explanation, then it's worth it. Don't get self-conscious. Thanks, Rex. I don't know if you've followed before or if you're here from Facebook. No, I don't have a Facebook. From Twitter or from the other platforms, but yeah, thanks for watching. This is already my longest stream. Now I'm not sure if I should continue. Yeah, I initially wanted to see what this link from the article led to, and I thought these were cash for math. Interesting. No, we don't math here. It is scientifically proven that math is a bad. It is scientifically proven that math is a bad idea. So, yes. Oh, look, YouTube. No, we're not doing this. So today we've had stories on evolution and the bad idea in science, which is math. I think I really think we can't drag it on any longer today. The good part is that we know what we'll have tomorrow, or maybe the day after. Yeah, the next two articles can't be done in this session because these being daily streams, I don't want to keep over an hour, and it's almost, or if not over, 45 minutes already. So another improvement, I messed up a bit. I learned some things. I hope those who watched were entertained, at least with the spicing things up at the middle of the stream. Yeah, next time I'm reading a boring story, or just one which is too filled with theory and everything that this article was, too dry. It's we don't want this stream to be like a desert. We have to keep the audience entertained, don't we? All right, you get my point. Hopefully by the end of the week I'll also have an outro for the stream. If any of you has any suggestions, you can give articles on Twitter, on Minds, on Gab. Join my server on Discord. These all should be in the description. And yeah, suggestions are also open for what you would like to see in the outro. Because until then, okay. Yeah, thanks Rex. Yeah, it takes time to get good. Oh, so you're one of the older followers. Very nice, very nice. Yeah, since we're here, I used to have a few episodes which are now unlisted. They're the scripted videos. I start with live stuff just to read up on creation news and stuff, and have a more consistent uploading schedule, and get used to creating more often between my scripted videos, which I'm not sure when Mass Creation Essay, because I'm changing the names of the scripted videos from broadcast to essays. I'm not sure when the third one will be, but hopefully I get time to work on it soon. So, anyone following? Now it's time to toast for mass creation, and I'll see you in the next one. Have a good